from University of Trento. And the speech is about unlocking the power of community, rethinking open hardware adoption from the ground up. Welcome on stage.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm coming from University of Trento. I'm a PhD student, and those are my professors. I'm kind of Padawan of them. And we are working on an open hardware adoption topic. And as an introduction, probably you all know about open source software. And open source hardware, also open hardware, is following the same phenomena since its design is made publicly available so that anyone can study, modify, distribute, and make and sell also. If the source code and design files like CAD files are open, they can sell it also. So why do we study open hardware adoption? Basically, it's out there. It's just not developed a lot in the academic literature. By the way, it's a research study, so it might be a little bit academic. And why am I into those open source stuff? Because it began with the theories in the academia, especially for the business scholars. There is no strict theory discussing that. Like all the theories are about manufacturers one side and the buyers or customers on other side. But those open source hardware communities are creating something different, theoretically unexplainable in academia. So there are some customers. The customers are also manufacturers in the open hardware communities. So that's why I got into it as an academic. And also there are relevance in underdeveloped areas like open source imaging mentioned in the previous talks, and underfunded sectors like literature pointed out. It's benefiting from open hardware and the software also communities creations. And the main difference and the hurdles come from different from the open source software. They are tangible products, so there are different licensing strategies, and there are different, sourcing the materials, bill of materials, and the manufacturing contexts, and the area is available for it, or how do you get the material from anywhere. For example, I tried to build something than open source hardware, like I'm doing the music thing in the other side as a hobby. So it's a guitar pedal, and I have to, order the bill of materials, some of the components from DigiK from US, because I couldn't find them here, and I couldn't find a way to get it from the China. So I'm a kind of new to these things. So the manufacturing context is kind of important. And like I said, existing frameworks, always about open source software, but we are talking about tangible products in here. And our strategy and our research is kind of two-part research. First part, I'm going to talk about the first part. It's about analyzing the open hardware-focused online podcasts. I found more than 200 podcasts about open hardware, which is strange. I thought it's relatively new phenomena, but there are lots of information about open hardware. OSHWA provides them, and DevOps. Lots of people are contributing to these podcasts. So we developed a strategy to, analyze those podcasts with some tools, like we used Whisper AI to code and transcript. We have lots of stuff and data. We use thematical analysis via NVivo, which is not open source software, but there was actually, it's another topic. There was an actually alternative open source software to analyze these texts, but familiarity, because we have to triangulate all of the analysis and the results or stuff like that. My professors were not ready for that, so familiarity, which camera and open source software guys, make it more familiar, because people are not using not familiar stuff So we did use NVivo at the end, and we followed some theoretical constructs from the previous literature, and we extended those theoretical constructs. These are word maps. Bigger the square is, bigger the importance. Just so the summary of key findings, those are the main constructs. So performance expectancy is seen in the podcasts. Again, it's cost-effective, customizable, impactful, but those cost-effective is always a positive side of adoption. It's the main thing, but let's see what the future brings because of the subscription and stuff like that. And effort expectancy shows there's a high learning curve. So in the assembly part of the open hardware, you have to have some kind of technical knowledge, and you can decrease them with some tutorials. And we saw some projects in the more developed adapted projects. They provide not only maker faire or face-to-face interactions, they also provide some tutorials in their GitLab or GitHub page, and that helps a lot. Video tutorials, how to assemble on hands-on experience by the video. And social influence about the peer networks, community support, boost adoption, it's kind of obvious. And infrastructure in the facilitating conditions, like I mentioned, I had to order everything from the DGK, and those are about kind of manufacturing context related things, facilitating conditions, and they are not usually well infrastructured in the underdeveloped regions of the world, like Uganda or Turkey or stuff like that. And price value, low upfront cost, it's kind of obvious. And habit, repeated use builds confidence, and those are more academic construct stuff. And we came up with those two additional constructs, which is, one is educational value. It's about intrinsic motivations. So they are focusing on some students, like in US, most of the STEM engineering students are kind of nudged into open hardware projects somehow. There's one lab in the US led by the Joshua Pierce, and he pushes people to focus more on open hardware projects. So it's a thing because it's a double-sided thing. They are educating themselves and contributing to the projects also. So it creates intrinsic motivation. And other thing is a kind of extrinsic reward in academia. It's a recognition benefits because most of the contributors are engineers, as we analyzed. Most of them are kind of having a day jobs and contributing the open source projects as a kind of passion projects, and they kind of looked at volunteers. So in that community environment, they are always blessed. Kind of in work, you do something, you provide something more than your contract wants from you, and you just do your job well done, and that's it. But we saw that in the communities, it's more, more cheerful. Like if you contribute a little thing, there is a intrinsic motivation coming from that people are appreciating more basically in the open source communities, and that community recognition motivates continued contribution to the open source world. And these are some direct codes, which I didn't mention. The major section on resume, the smallest contribution for example, there was an example for 14-year-old boy it's a coding genius in US, but he can only contribute to the open source projects. He cannot he cannot get in the job environment. So a little contribution can be a big part of their CV, they said. So yeah, those are kind of about recognition benefits and educational value. And these are easy to say, but hard to implement part. and is designing for learning, offering accessible documentation and tutorials and kits like I mentioned, and recognize contributors somehow. You can use badges, mentions in the community pages and public credits somehow, and support onboarding, like create beginner-friendly tools. I mean, in the engineer mind, I mean, it's you do something and it's very obvious for you, and you think that everything is obvious for everyone. I mean, but it's not. Beginner-friendly tools and guides can lead widespread adoption, especially for the new engineer students. And embedding open hardware in education, again, it would be kind of beneficial, and policy support about provide general, legal clarity and local production infrastructure can be beneficial. And as I said, this is a two-part research. We found that those two last ones are might affect the behavioral intention to adopt open hardware. And we constructed this with people in the members of the Free Software Foundation, and thanks for that. And this is for survey study, and we are waiting for your answers if we spread this one. And it's about open hardware adoption survey. It takes 10 minutes or so. If you are in the communities, and you can be contributor, you can be user, or just a follower about in the open hardware. So thank you for everyone to come in here, and thank you for listening.